Hey guys, I'm just going to chime in here really quickly to tell you about Energetic Consulting. We are a sales, marketing and business management support consultancy dedicated to the Australian solar power, renewable energy and clean tech industries. We can help you with all your marketing needs and sales training and business management and coaching. So have a look at our website, www.energeticconsulting.com.au, and let's see how we can help your business grow and scale to take you to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of Sustainable Stories. Sustainable Stories series is all about building resilience and sharing stories of grit and determination, overcoming obstacles, and sharing stories of individuals in the solar and energy storage industry about how they've overcome highs and lows in their career, and learning the tips and tricks and strategies that they've used in their own personal lives about overcoming those challenges. Today we have Paul Scerri, who is the Director of Sales for REC Solar Panels. Paul has been in the solar industry for many years and is a real advocate for the industry and what it stands for. He did work with the Clean Energy Council for many years as a committee member. He was involved with the Australian Solar Council, which became the Smart Energy Council, as a director there for about 6 years. Paul has an engineering background, has worked for Bosch Solar, switching from the automotive division into solar for many years, and has been a real character on the scene within solar power. Has a real smile on his face every time I see him. And Paul, welcome to the series today, and good to have you on.
Thank you very much, Russell. Really appreciate this opportunity to share a bit of my life story, and thanks for doing a bit of research there. It will save me a few minutes.
Well, Paul, I've known you for many years, and especially I think we probably met back when you were at Bosch, and I had my own solar company at that stage, Sun Empire Solar Systems, and we were buying a lot of Bosch product and even put the commercial system on the Bosch roof at the time, and you and I hit it off at that stage, and I was always fascinated by your story because you came from automotive, you'd lived overseas for some years, and you were a senior leader in Bosch, and you made the change, and you never looked back. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It was definitely a journey. After graduating from university, I went straight into automotive, designing starter motors and alternators, and worked my way through project management, sales, and then regional sales, looking after APEC. But in that role there, I learnt that the Australian automotive industry was going to close down completely. The Americans were planning the exit dates for Ford and General Motors, so I had to do something about that. So I'd spent many years working in automotive, making cars safer and less pollutant, and I thought that the next logical step for me was to go to industry which had zero emissions, and that's where solar became my next campaign.
But tell me, okay, let's talk about that then. So did you feel any sort of dread or overwhelm about the automotive industry winding back and then having to, reskill, retool into another industry?
What I did was, or I understood that in the automotive industry, I'd been there for 15 years, and I had a huge network, and it was all developed manually, phone calls and emails and so forth. And I was entering a new industry which I knew nobody. And LinkedIn became my best friend. I spent hours and hours on there building a whole new network, and I did that after every conference. I think I had the reputation of being at every party in the solar industry. I was there networking, getting to know people, grabbing business cards, and building up and getting to know everybody.
Yeah, and so you and I had involvement through the Australian Solar Council at the time, which became the Smart Energy Council. We ran the Melbourne chapter meetings for about, 5 years, I think it was.
Yeah, that was really cool, that.
Yeah, we did it out of Melbourne Town Hall. And one thing I've always enjoyed, being friends and colleagues, is that you always come with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement for what you do, and you bring your warm personality and you give your all to it.
Yes.
And I'm really keen to understand more about that, because have you always been like that, having an optimistic, upbeat personality, or was that, created over time?
No, I think I've always had it. I've always uh, like to plan my life a fair bit. Of course, there's obstacles coming the way and so forth, but for me, it's all about enjoying the moment and having goals to inspire for.
Yeah, and I think I mean you said that you were networking like crazy in the early days, and we'd go to
Yep.
the essentially the opening of a box, and you were there, but you quickly built up a huge network within the industry, and I think most people know your face from the conferences, and your well-known identity through your work at the Clean Energy Council and Smart
Yes.
Energy Council, and now you're a piece of the furniture, pardon the pun, but in the best possible way. I mean, it's everyone enjoys having you around.
Yeah, no, definitely. Did fulfill 2 terms on the Solar Council board, and through that got to know a lot of industry players, both internationally and locally, and that got me invited to many events. I got accused of bribing the editor of their magazine because I was on appearing on every edition for a year and a half, I think. But it was just me getting out there and being where the cameras were.
Yeah, and so let's talk about this then, because I think there's a lot of new people to the industry. Maybe they've been in the industry for like say less than 5 years, and obviously it's a challenge to get yourself ingrained within the various aspects of the industry and to get to know people. What did it really take for you to get so heavily involved? Is that your personality, or did you just want to be a senior leader within the industry?
For myself, it was about wanting to contribute. Wanted to contribute to a young industry in Australia. I'd spent, said, 15 years in a automotive industry, which was over 100 years old and well mature, well established in this country. But this new industry just needed some help, and I got heavily involved in any events that were industry based, and always welcomed young graduates that wanted to join the industry, because that was clearly an endorsement that I'd chosen the right industry to join when the next generation were inspiring to be part of it, and I'd give them advice, introduce them to people to help them in that path.
And so all these years later, I mean, you're many years into your solar power career now.
Yep.
Any regrets? It's been, everyone knows it's the solar coaster, right? Like it's not an easy ride. Looking back, do you think, geez, I wish I stayed in automotive?
No. Very happy. For automotive, for me to continue would have been moving offshore, and this country is just too lovely to leave. Melbourne is the best city. It's voted the best city in the world for a couple of years. So no, it was in the best place, and it was the right choice for myself and my family.
Yeah. And so, then do you have any particular advice for people that are really trying to build up their identity and profile within the industry? Are there any tips and tricks that you can share with them?
One of the key tips is networking. Network. Attend events. Contribute to efforts of our industry bodies, the Smart Energy Council and the Clean Energy Council, as they strive to influence the decision makers in Canberra, and obviously the state as well. It's all about being involved and giving back.
And what about now? So obviously we're going through challenging times. This is recorded during COVID-19, and it is a challenging time for all of us. There are businesses going out of business. There are, people that have lost jobs, and it's incredibly difficult for many to stay upbeat. How do you personally stay upbeat during these challenging times? I mean, I would have no doubt that, as the director of sales at REC Solar Panels, you would have been impacted also.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've seen it, we've felt it. But the way I've always seen it in every challenge we've had, both globally and locally, is solar power is the future generation source for the world. And for Australia, we have a long way to go to complete that transition. Of course, there is resistance from our opposition, That's like new evolving technology. There will always be the Kodak moments, as they say.
Yep.
And looking back in 20 years' time, I'll say, why did we take so long? But yeah, we just have to keep pushing. Of course, there is some people that have had it a lot tougher than me, and I do feel for them because they did choose the right industry. Unfortunately, there have been quite a few obstacles that have held them back. But we will get through this. The industry will recover, and we'll be stronger from it. And I hope that those people are able to come back to the industry because the talents and experience that they've gained, we need, we value.
I mean, is there something that you personally do to keep that upbeat, optimistic attitude?
Yes, I always look for the long game. There's always the light at the end of the tunnel there. When in a challenging situation, I like to relate it back to Aussie rules football and focus on your game, and the scoreboard will take care of itself. Is one of the mottos I share with my team.
It's interesting, right? I mean, solar specifically, and this goes out to sustainability people, clean tech people. You know, it's not just about solar, but it is a new industry. But if you look at it from a European perspective or a Japanese perspective or other, countries or cultures, they play the long game. They're not in it, just for 10 years. I mean, I've certainly worked for a Chinese business as a director of marketing and strategy at Sungrow and the US companies, and they really do think about that long game, that, hey, okay, there's going to be lots of speed humps along the way. And you and I have both seen along the way, like if we go back to 2008, 2009 global financial crisis, or, the tariff going from the feed-in tariff going from 60 cents down to 25 to 8 to 5 cents. And then, so many different changes, the $8,000 rebate for residential. It actually has always been challenging, and sales would ramp up, and then all of a sudden, many of us wouldn't have any sales for 2 or 3 months. And then you build up the war chest, and then you'd have to ride it through, the rough times, and then it would take off again. I personally don't see this as any different. This is another one of those periods where it's just extremely tough. What's your perspective on that?
Definitely very similar, but all coming in there. This one is affecting the whole globe. It's affecting all industries. We were very fortunate that solar was listed as an essential service, so the stores were able to stay out there. Of course, some had bigger crews than others that were reluctant to go out and continue, or couldn't go out. So there's been idling along at a reduced rate, but we will get back to our traditional trajectory. We've been seeing installation rates increasing year by year, and there's nothing stopping us, because we are the future.
So Paul, I'm interested in just talking about you and your history. Going back, did you have any particular role models growing up? Do you have any role models now that you have, mentors, role models? Because I think often that's how we're shaped and influenced, and that's how we grow as leaders. What was it like for you?
Oh yeah, I have reflected on that question, and for me, it's been more about people I've admired. But one influencing person in my younger years was at high school, a school teacher. He was a mechanical engineer, ex Vietnam vet as well. Never talked about it, but we knew, from comments he'd made, and he persuaded me to continue with my studies and go to tertiary. And it was all because he would always educate and talk about a purpose when he introduced a new topic. He was a tech teacher, so it was easy to provide a purpose to the different technical topics he'd present. He would always provide a purpose and a life experience of why we were learning this new methods.
And Was it then that you started thinking about, purpose in your career and life and developing that? And was that the chrysalis for that to occur?
Absolutely, absolutely. I decided I wanted to get into design. Then it was into mechanical engineering, and I started planning my life. Very determined where I wanted to study and what I wanted to do. Then it was looking for the industries to work in, and launching my career and working my way through into a sales role, and then into the solar industry.
And what about now? I mean, obviously, when you came into the industry, and you've been in it for a good few years now, but you didn't know anyone at that point. I mean, did you develop role models or mentors within the industry?
In the industry, it was more colleagues and obviously people I admire, and probably more recently, it's been about senior finding someone in senior management that had similar values to me, and looking up to them. So I had one at Bosch. He was the one who motivated me to join the Solar Council. So he was a director of the German equivalent, and set me a personal challenge of being in the Solar Council within the next 12 months, and that's obviously how you and I got more involved.
Yep.
And probably more recently within RSC, our CEO, I admire how he's kept the European business competitive, made it, it's become quite a global company with many cultures in it, and he's able to connect with every culture in the organisation, and to me that's very impressive, and I look up to him.
Well, and it seems like you've set goals for yourself along the way. I mean, you've set challenges and goals to keep yourself motivated.
Yep.
Is that the case? Is that something that you've had to develop throughout your career, or has that always been your personality?
I think it's been, since high school, it's been definitely part of my character. Obviously, playing the long game, setting myself long-term goals. Painful for the family around me, but that is me, and it has paid off. I left Bosch to get experience in small business, to increase my value and employability, and it actually paid off. It was a bit bumpy because small business is risky, and when you have a federal government that's anti-renewables, it puts a lot of pressure on those small businesses, and so I do feel for them. I do feel for the installers that represent our brands out there as they fight to survive and keep their teams employed. They influence a lot of livelihoods, and obviously coming back to REC, I take a lot of those learnings with me from CNI and distribution.
And what about? I'm sure your career hasn't been smooth sailing the whole time. Have you had any key failures? Key low points, and we all have had them. Are there any ones that stand out for you?
I like to call it a setback, more than failure. And it was during the Abbott years when he went, deliberately attacked the industry and scared off all foreign investment in CNI. I was, my goal back just after leaving Bosch was to have one of the first independent 1 megawatt solar farms, and back then 6 years ago that was going to, if anybody talked about it, it was either bragging about something that wouldn't happen. They were very rare, and nearly had to over the line till the investors got frightened off, and it was sort of a crash and burn, and I remember sitting in the backyard chopping firewood quite enthusiastically.
Take out some of the stress.
Yes, yeah.
Well, do you have? Is there anything that you do specifically to manage your stress? We all feel overwhelmed. We all feel stressed. We all feel challenged. Are there any things that you do to take out that energy and shift it and refocus it?
There's been two areas. Very early on, when I was in automotive in quite a high pressure role, I realised that I was bringing home a lot of that stress back home. So I took up trail bike riding. I found that was absolute release, and I think it was probably the adrenaline that was doing it. As I was able to block out all the worries of work and home and focus on the task at hand. I told my son that I loved it because you focus on staying alive. You can forget about all your problems. Then he put that in his assignment that his mum and grandparents read. So I got a bit of trouble there, but that was the start of managing my stress, and I've that's turned into more of a bonding time with my sons.
Yeah.
Since then, obviously my styles and techniques have evolved, and I break down problems into smaller problems and solve one by one, and start getting a few wins on the board. But one thing I've learned about myself is I actually thrive with pressure. Or I'm best under pressure, like you do as well. And but you have to be just careful that sometimes that pressure builds up and you don't realize it to a point where it can become overwhelming unless you manage it. For me, managing is about breaking it down.
And it's a really interesting approach, and I'm interested in what you mentioned there. That a lot of us are A-type individuals. We're driven, we're motivated. It takes a lot of grit and determination to be successful in a career, but especially in this industry. And but the challenge with that is that many of us break down along the way, so we push too hard. So I do remember specifically working 16-hour days for quite a long time, or 7 days a week, at least 12 hours a day, or whatever it might have been. And you can only do that for so long. The pressure gets too much, you get overwhelmed. And often we have a facade. So the facade is everything's fine. I get up, I do my routines, I get to work, I'm keeping everyone else together. But internally, we can be suffering ourselves. And unless you have those outlets to release the pressure, unless we know ourselves very well, then we can begin to fall apart and not manage ourselves well. So, and especially, you're a family man, you've got the family to think of. And I know in a sales position, you're often on the road. So you've got the trail bike riding. You've got, breaking down problems and tasks into bite-sized chunks. What else is there that you do along the way to not hit that point of overwhelm and, breaking point?
Yeah, that was, I think one important thing for people is to be self-aware of what the environment is doing to you. And one thing took a while to learn is to taking some time out, taking time out to actually do very little. And I think it's my daughters that have taught me that is just chill and watch a movie together, or just go out for a lunch and just have time with each other. It's the body and especially the mind just needs that break from day-to-day matters, and just appreciate where you've come.
Yeah. And how do you find switching off at night? So, you've got you're a leader of business, an international business. So often you have phone calls, to Europe, or, at the end of the day. And, but have you found that challenging to, stretch yourself in that way? Can you switch your mind off at the end of the day, or you're waking up at 3 a.m. with, the thoughts racing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I haven't stopped working when I get home. I'm planning the next day. I'm closing off an item that I didn't get time to during the day. So I do spend a little too much time on my laptop.
Yeah.
But my escapes are the family and movies. I have been binging on Netflix during this coronavirus, and lost myself in a couple of series, which has been an escape as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to switch off. One thing that I'm interested in is it's not often spoken about, which is this aspect of fear. So fear, especially now, obviously there's a lot of business owners that are experiencing levels of fear of losing everything that they may have spent many years building up, or employees, fear of losing their jobs, or, diminished or decreased income. And it's not something that gets spoken about very often, which is confronting fear and what to do with that. Have you experienced that yourself, where there are, fears and then the pressures coming in, And do you have any particular ways of handling fear?
I think for myself, having a long-term outlook helps 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 me cope with that in the immediate term.
Yep.
I think again is understanding what you're fearful of is key, and then trying to break that down to because what it can be normally is just an accumulation of problems, and it gets to a level where there's so many problems that it seems it is overwhelming. But if you can break them down and just solve a couple at a time, then you sort of manage through the rest of it. I mean, some stuff you can't control at all.
Absolutely. And it seems, I mean, you've developed a real key approach to how to, to overcome those challenges. And I think one thing that's been very common is, just breaking it down into those bite-sized chunks, manageable, problems that you can overcome. Because, if you've ever heard the analogy of running a marathon, if all you focus on in a marathon is the end goal, like 42 kilometers in, then it's going to be a painful journey, right?
Sure.
Or I know people that do Centurion events where they run 100 kilometers. I mean, that's got to be painful. But many of them break it down into these bite-sized chunks. All I need to do is get to the next corner of the street. All I need to do is get to that tree in the distance, or 3 water stations. That's all I've got to do. And it makes the difference. And I mean, you've certainly, you've uncovered that, and it's worked for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's rewarding. You're setting smaller goals and rewarding yourself once you've accomplished those. And yep, I did that part. Now what's next?
Well, and that's the thing that, I mean, you set new goals, and I mean, I certainly am a big fan of listening to podcasts, and I listen to at least one a day, and the common theme that I always hear is set a goal for the future, and what's going to draw you moving forward, something to focus on, what's true north, right? This is where we are today. We have to deal with that, but I still have an aim for the future.
Yes. Yep.
Paul, you've come into contact with thousands of people in the industry over the years since you've been involved in solar energy storage. You must have seen some common themes of business leaders. I mean, you've no doubt come into contact with some incredible leaders in your time, and in automotive as well. Have you seen any commonalities, 2 or 3 things that's common to really excellent, great leaders?
I think one key thing that I see valuable in leaders is leaders walk the talk. That lead by example, and are willing to roll up their sleeves and get into it. That's the way I try and lead, is to show how it's done. I hate preaching. It's more about let's get it done. Do it this way.
Yeah.
If it works, if it doesn't, we'll readjust and learn together.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that learning together is key as well, to have that growth mindset, that learning mindset. Is that something that do you ever take time out in your, Monday to Friday spans of work to just learn something new, to be creative?
I used to. Now I'm deploying what I've learnt over the many years. I'm realising now that I have acquired a lot of knowledge, and now it's about recognising that and sharing that, and training. So I do love to teach. I think when I eventually look at retirement, I'll only go to semi-retirement and start teaching and educating, because passing on knowledge is something I like to do.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to stay fresh. We have to keep learning. We have to keep growing. And yet the business week, let's just say if it's Monday to Friday, obviously, you're doing some hours outside of 9 to 5 or Saturdays, Sundays. But it can be really challenging to find time to learn and be creative. And especially when there's deadlines to meet. I mean, it can be extremely difficult. You've got many years in your career. Obviously, some younger men and women don't have that. They're a little bit newer to industry or their careers. Is there any advice that you would give those people about how to grow as an individual and grow in experience?
Yeah, I think one thing I've tried to do is listen, listen. That you'll always have, you'll hear opinions, but through a lot of those opinions, there will be real, true advice in there that you can reflect on when you come across situations that you think are unsolvable.
Yep.
That's I think that's a key there, is especially experienced people. That's I always try to surround myself with experienced talent.
Yep.
Let's say a good manager has great people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's critical. Absolutely critical. If you look back again over your career in solar and automotive, is there something that just took you an extremely long time to learn? You know, sometimes we learn by hitting our head up against the brick wall, which is not ideal. But was there something that you think, geez, I wish I'd learned that 20 years ago?
I think it was learning to take a break, learning to slow down a little bit. I was always pushing myself for many years, very ambitious, always chasing the next level. When maybe I should have just enjoyed that moment of where I was and give myself some time out and not be so stressed.
Yep. Yeah. And then has that fed into a feeling of resilience for you or grit and determination? You know, being able to be recharged and come back more determined.
Oh, absolutely. It's not easy out there. The world is even, it becomes more and more challenging for the younger generation, and for us older generation. All this new tech, new approaches makes it a very noisy environment. So it's about keeping your head clear and just grabbing what will work for you and running with it, because you can get distracted very easily, very quickly with all the different approaches and different technologies out there.
Yeah. So do you? Let's talk about that. I mean, obviously, the world is full of distractions, information age. It's very easy, you know, especially in these times of, you know, for those working at home. There's another YouTube clip I could watch, or you know, there's social media popped up on my feed, or whatever it might be. How do you keep your focus throughout the day to get the job done?
Well, you probably have noticed from the background, I'm in my office, so I had to get out of home and back to the office to stop those distractions, because there's a whole lot going on with four adult children at home.
Yeah, I can imagine. Are they, you know, Dad, we're hungry, you know?
Yeah, pick me up here, drop me off there, all sorts of things. But also, yeah, there'll be streaming and everything going on in the house as visitors and so forth. So just had to get some peace and quiet and get stuck into the job.
Yeah. What about I remember a few years ago you rewarded yourself with a nice new car. I remember it was a beautiful car, a blue, and, you know, lovely car, and it was such a cool gift to give yourself after many years of hard work. And is that something do you reward yourself along the way, even if small, like on a daily basis or a weekly basis? And do you bring reward into your life?
Absolutely. I definitely want, make sure I give as much as I can, but I do stop and reward myself with things that I wanted as a young man. That the car was something that I wanted for many years. So when the opportunity arose, I grabbed it and I still have it, and part of a car club now. And every month we were going on good cruises, and then obviously the bikes were the next reward.
Yep. Yeah, and you got to. Small things that we need to give ourselves along the way. I mean, they're not small, but sometimes even, you know, just a cup of coffee. If, like, right, I've just had a really good morning session, now I'm going to give myself a cup of coffee or whatever it is, a donut, or, you know, something to just take the edge off. Do you have any, routines or habits or rituals in the morning to get yourself going and into the game?
The morning is yeah. I need routine. I think that helps me focus, and it's all about getting up, having a light, healthy breakfast, and then heading off into the city for work. I'll use public transport to go in the city because it is far more relaxing than the Melbourne peak hour traffic. And get in, and I'm refreshed and ready for the day.
Yep.
I actually catch up with my brother once a week for dinner, so that's another. That's where we're rewarding ourselves, but also just taking some time out and listen to each other. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think it's key. I think one of the key themes that I've seen, especially in this series of doing these interviews, is that everyone's a little bit different, right? So some people do need structure, some people do need routine, and others don't as much. But I think a key theme is that people learn about themselves, like know thyself, be thyself, that theme, and really knowing yourself and what works. Because it's okay, to look elsewhere for inspiration. And I think that is needed. I mean, that's the whole point of this Sustainable Stories series, is to inspire others, during tough times and to uplift. But unless we actually know ourselves and what works for us, then we're floundering.
It definitely makes you a better person. If you understand why you react to certain situations, you can then modify that behavior or avoid being exposed to that situation if the reaction is not healthy.
Yeah. And what now, Paul? I mean, it's a challenging time. We're almost halfway through 2020. What do you see happening for the next 6 months in your career, but in the industry?
For the industry, it's rebuilding. It's getting back to business as usual. It will be a different world for sure. There'll be things that communities and industry don't do anymore. There'll be new ways, new approaches, obviously with hygiene and interaction with people that we do. Will be a lot more using technology to communicate instead of flying around the country like I was doing. So definitely I'll be on the ground a lot more than in the air, which will be a big relief. The airport was like a bus station for me for the last couple of years. So
I used to see your updates. I'm like, oh, there he goes again. Where is he now? Adelaide, Brisbane. Where is he?
And there's many purpose behind those posts. Is for many years I was criticised for not having time for people, and those posts just show that how busy I was, and it was self-inflicted. I admit it was all about, for me, FaceTime with important partners and customers. But I think we've realised now that we can do it by, just like we're doing today. We don't need to be in a studio together or in a restaurant together. We can actually have this video conference, and hey, it actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I like that what you just mentioned then of that really great self-reflection of, you had some feedback, you took that on board, and you adjusted your sales. You pivoted. Which, I mean, is crucial within anyone's career. There's this thought that you can either go meditate in a cave for the next 20 years and become enlightened, or you can run your own business, or run someone else's business, or or be involved in an industry and learn about yourself that way as well. You don't need to go hide in a cave, because you learn so much about yourself in business.
Definitely. When you expose yourself to different situations and meet different types of people, you do learn about yourself as well. You realise, oh dear, I did not realise I like that type of character, and you start spending more time with those type of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And adjusting behaviours. If something's not working, then we can adjust behaviours along the way and say, well, that's not serving me now. What can I do, which is going to be more beneficial for myself and my career and those around me.
Absolutely. Yep.
Paul, I think you've certainly had a common theme of giving back, being in service and of contribution through the Clean Energy Council, the Smart Energy Council, and I'm sure there's been many other things that you've done. Where did that come from? Where did this mindset of service come from?
I think that came from growing up. I always recall my father would always have a very large birthday party, and he'd invite everybody that has contributed to his success, to his achievements, would always come on his birthday, and us, the kids, would be the waiters and waitresses, bringing drinks and food to them, and that happened for many years, and my father said, yes, it's important to be friends with everybody, because you never know where their path's going to take them. They could end up being quite important people in your life, and it's important that you treat them as equals and be friends with these people.
Yeah, and never burn a bridge. I mean, this is one hell of a small industry. Don't burn bridges.
Definitely. Yep.
So we're basically, towards the end of our conversation, and it's always a pleasure. I mean, you and I have caught up many times over the years, and we always have a good laugh, and it's always good to get together. And imagine now it is your last day on Earth. I know you've got 4 kids, wife and all kinds of friends and different people in your life, and you now have the opportunity to share 3 of your pearls of wisdom that you've learnt throughout many years of being in business, but being a father as well. And are there 3 pearls of wisdom that you would like to leave for your grandchildren, if you had them, about what you've learned in life?
Definitely. I think the most important message to my siblings is never give up on your dream. Life will present challenges along the way, but there'll always be a path through the challenge or around the challenge to realize that dream. So never give up.
Yeah, never give up the dream. And well, it seems like you've still got big dreams and aspirations in your career and for the industry.
Yes, definitely.
So we're better for it. So Paul, really appreciate your time. I know you're busy and you've taken time out of your day to share with us. So that's appreciated, and just really enjoyable to see the success that you're having. And I really honor you for, being such a key component of the industry and giving back so much. And yeah, thank you for that.
Well, Russell, thank you very much for both this opportunity and all your kind words throughout this interview.
No, it's been a pleasure, and I think you'll obviously be around for many years to come. I always feel your passion and your enthusiasm and excitement for the industry, and it's infectious. So I was really keen to get you on board.
Yeah, I'll never give up, man.
I know. I think we can all see that, and I think on that note, that's a good note to leave on. So thanks, Paul, and hope to speak soon.
Thank you very much. Good man.